school principals uh, to give us a sense of like where are we at as a nation, right? We've been, for a couple of years now, there's been a collective effort to really address the spike in chronic absenteeism that occurred after the pandemic, and also that was there in many locales um, before the pandemic. And so the first thing we see from this survey, and this is a representative sample of school principals, is that, about a quarter of them are saying like we're doing pretty okay. We're sort of where we were around the pandemic. Many of those turn out to be sort of smaller elementary schools, right? You remember this is elementary, middle, and high schools here, but not totally, right? So some folks have a sort of a different experience from most, but three-fourths of school principals are in the mix with us, right? They're having challenges. That's by far the most common thing. About a third are saying, we're making improvements, but we're not there yet. A quarter are saying we've had some improvements, but we're still way high. We're still way above where we were. 10% are not, for whatever reasons we don't know yet, have not made much traction against the spike up, and they're still deep in sort of all-time highs. But that, shows by and large that most people are still, we're still having to do the work, right? We haven't we haven't fully turned the corner. We're making progress, but we got to still collectively figure out what it takes to keep moving forward. All right, next slide. I think one of the most interesting things is we did, and this is some of the first data I've seen on this, is we've actually asked the school principals to give us the sense of the effectiveness of the strategies they're trying. And we sort of listed many of sort of the evidence-based strategies. And I'll just highlight a couple of overall findings. One is that, all of this shows that the strategy in itself is not the silver bullet. It's the application of the strategy in your circumstances. There could be challenges with implementation, or it could be that, in fact, this strategy is not the one you actually needed, right? Just because a strategy is evidence-based doesn't mean it's universally needed or it will universally work. So if we take for one family engagement and outreach, which is, many places have had significant gains by improving this. And we see that, you put effective and very effective together. That's about half of principals are saying this has been a really good strategy for us. But another significant, others have said, it's made a difference, but it's not the thing. It wasn't the thing alone. And that really argues that we're going to get to again and again, they really need to have a comprehensive set of solutions that are customized to your reality, and realize that it's got to be a weave of a couple of those. It's not going to just be one of those, right? Sorry, just go back. There's one more. Go back one slide again. Sorry, I wanted to bring one other thing. Other way. It was interesting that the two that had the highest combined effective, very effective, were things that related to school connectedness and this idea of reconnecting our kids to school as our sort of best prevention strategy. 60% of principals reported that improving student-teacher relationships was either an effective or very effective strategy they found for reducing chronic absenteeism. And 53% found that improving peer relationships. And also they had very few, only 5% of principals put it in the non-effective category. So at a very low non-effective rate. Now you can go to the next slide. The one I wanted to stress here, because it really is going to set up JT and his comments in our further discussion, is that we look at this idea of having a school attendance team, which we've all talked about the importance of that. Again, the majority of principals find that to be an effective or very effective strategy, but about a third of them are like, it's that in itself isn't quite the thing, right? And that again gets back to both implementation probably, and also, it needs to be a team, but a team's also going to have resources and strategies and actions, right? It's not just the team themselves. And perhaps the most interesting to me was the last one, right? Using surveys, interviews, or focus groups to gain deeper understanding into the reasons for chronic absenteeism. And this one just jumped out. 41% of principals say we're not doing that. And that to me really stood out as saying like that, and this makes sense. Understand with the time and resources and the need to improve, the huge push is to move to action and intervention and not spending time to figuring out the reasons behind the absenteeism. Let's just move to ways to get absenteeism better. So I can see that that's a reason you might be tempted to skip over that. We're going to talk about how that's probably not the best strategy. But it is one that, like, many are not doing it. Some have found it to be not effective. It has the smallest combined effective, very effective, which again means there's probably implementation or other challenges. But that to me is a space that I would argue we need more collective work on because it really seems to getting insights into why kids are not coming to school in your locale, which varies by place, is going to be very important to figuring out which strategies you need to combine to have the most effective comprehensive strategy. Um, Next slide. And then the final question we asked, connecting to this, is: Are you using sort of this idea of people-powered, evidence-based supports as a strategy to reduce chronic absenteeism, in addition to other things they may do? And we found that, a quarter of principals are using high-intensity tutoring and seeing that that also helps improve attendance. And there's some good research to back that up. About half are using mentoring, does do that. Again, a quarter success coaching, which sort of combines mentoring and tutoring. So if you combine success coaching with mentoring, again, you have a strong majority of principals that see the value in that, and also wraparound supports, right, which is often used to address out of school needs. All right. What I want to do now, and I'm going to be very brief about this because I really want to give JT his full time and attention, is just to give us a reminder, or for those that are joining us for the first time, what ourselves and also working with attendance works. When we analyze the places that made some of the greatest gains and improvements, we found they had sort of this comprehensive approach. And again, I just want to highlight, and I'm just a foreshadowing to you, I'm not going to go through all these slides one by one, but what that comprehensive approach is. And that's really about this idea of, first believing we can make progress, right? And not feeling like it's just overwhelming, or it's just, if the kids don't want to come to school, how can we get them to school? Is that you do have to know your challenges, right? You do have to really understand the reasons why, because otherwise you can't tailor your actions to the actual causes of the absenteeism. You need to organize your response. We're going to look at that in a minute. And then you need to align your resources. So I just want to go a little bit into organizing your response now, just to focus on that to further set JT up. So yeah. So, a comprehensive response really includes this idea of having your district and school teams with actionable data, right? Someone's got to be looking at the data, have access to the data, and have the ability to go from that data to figure out what we should do with it, right? What type of strategies and interventions do we need for which students and which schools, or which groups or which grades within a school? And then, given the magnitude of the challenge, you really have to think about, and we can go to the next slide as we do this, prevention, right? How do we reduce the number of kids that become chronically absent? Or if, as JT is going to talk about, how do we win the quarter and have them come any day they possibly can in that quarter? That's where these things like the school connectedness that got high ratings come in, the family engagement, the messaging, that's all part of that prevention, right? And again, it's going to be a weave of those strategies customized to your circumstances. Next slide. Then we need this problem solving function, right? That's where the teams and the data comes in. It's also where engaging students and families to get to that root cause, the thing that maybe folks are maybe passing over a little bit. And then having some sort of, early warning, MTSS, student success system means to sort of operationalize our interventions. And often with that additional people power of coaches and mentors or tutors to provide that relationship-based sort of problem solving. And then next slide is that, even when we're making improvements, kids are going to be still missing too much school, right? Even as we're making progress. So we see that. So we always have to keep in mind, what are some of our mitigation strategies to prevent, even as they're coming more often, but still not often enough, to lessen the impact of those days lost by various strategies. And one I just always like to highlight, because it's one of the lowest cost ones, is this really idea of peer mentoring to support social reintegration. Because we know when a kid has a history of chronic absenteeism, or if they miss many days in a row, or if they've had a bad month and that it feeds on itself. Oh, I haven't been to school recently. I feel less connected. I feel less aware of what's going on. I'm behind on my assignments. I've lost contact with some of my classmates. If there isn't somebody actively trying to reintegrate those students in a social way, that alone can drive them to even miss fewer schools. And they're growing very good. And Jen was foreshadowing this coming up in the research to practice thing, ways to sort of use the students in the school to play some of those roles, which is is a sort of unending resource in a way, right? That doesn't have is the cost associated often with, you know, uh, bringing in a sort of a somebody to run a program for you. All right. I think we with that we you know I guess one more thing just to set JT up. This idea that, actionable attendance data and teams looking at it. And he's going to show you how this really can work in a real district. But the idea that it's real time is possible, often weekly at a school level, monthly at a district level. We have to disaggregate by groups and grades. We need to look at trends over time from the start of the year, prior years, sub periods within the year. And that other big one is really track and monitor the effectiveness of interventions, because the only way you're going to get to a really strong, comprehensive local solution is to know which strategies work for which kids and which circumstances. And the only way to do that is to be able to track and monitor what you do and then be able to figure out what's working for who when. So with that, we can go ahead. I'm going to turn over to Jen to bring in JT from Washoe County to show us some really good uh, research to action here of how you can have strong data for your teams in your districts.
Thanks, Bob. And don't go anywhere because we're going to invite you to keep, tee us up with some additional
Mhm,
questions following JT's
mhm.
presentation. So I'm super thrilled to be able to welcome Dr. JT Stark, the data analytics coordinator, who's on the road right now. Doing some of the strategic data project fellowship work. So thank you from dialing in from actually wherever you are today. But he's here representing Washoe County School District and really wanting, again, we wanted to hold up this idea of what does it look like to really have strong, actionable data. And I'm going to invite JT. I'm going to stop sharing because I believe you wanted to share. And
Right.
you should be able to do that as soon as I stop. Let's see. Does that let you do that, JT?
It should. Give me a moment. And thank you for the awesome introductions, Bob and Jen. On the road in Berkeley for the Strategic Data Project, which is just the absolute best fellowship and best thing I've ever done in my life, other than being with you and the Attendance Solutions Network today. Um, it's not doing my screen yet. There we go. All right. Can everybody, Jen, can you see my screen? We're all good? Okay. Yes, I'm JT Stark, Washoe County School District. We're in northern Nevada, not southern Nevada, about 7, 8, 9 hours, depending on how fast you drive to Las Vegas. We're actually closer to Lake Tahoe. We have about 60,000 students, around 4,000 teachers, and I absolutely love what I do because I get to focus on the data and informing our educators to help kids every single day. And when Bob asked me to come to the Attendance Solution Network to talk about chronic absenteeism, I was even more excited because the team I work with are so passionate and they're so smart, a lot smarter than I am. And they're able to put together data that, I'm able to just dream about and talk about out loud. And then, next thing I know, it's in front of me and I'm able to go tell schools how to use it, right? And so I'm hoping today I can share just how we attack informing absenteeism and then how we've done that over the last several years through continuous improvement. So I'm just going to jump right in, right? Data focus, we try to consider all aspects of absenteeism. And so we have we have our own data warehouse. We have an automated reporting system. And in there, we have an absenteeism dashboard. We have about 50 other reports, but this dashboard is our #1 most used report last year. And this year, it's going to be used even more because we made some major upgrades. A little bit about our system is that we've had our data warehouse in Washoe County stood up since 2012. And I'm learning that's kind of rare in our field. So I am absolutely fortunate to have a whole lot of historical information at my fingertips to be able to build reporting. We update our data warehouse every night from our student information system. We use Infinite Campus, but we update every single night so we can get that real-time data in front of teachers every single day, teachers and administrators every single day. Due to time, I can't really go over the entire absenteeism dashboard. If you were a group of principals right now, or APs, deans, teachers, counselors, anyone from a school, this would be about a 45-minute presentation where I would go into detail on in which charts to look at, when to go in them, and what we're looking for. But today I'm going to focus on why we're bringing together two different absenteeism measures in this same report, right? And that's because progress monitoring gets a big uplift when you look at ADA with chronic absenteeism. So in our report, as you can see, it's quite long in the animation. We begin with chronic absenteeism at the very top because that is the most important measure in absenteeism. We know that whole litany of research from Bob himself that tells us when those kids are missing that 10% of days or even lower, I'm reading, that it can have negative outcomes, negative academic outcomes, negative outcomes in general, right? I'm talking about dropout. From there, we do a lot of breakouts. We break out into every student population we have and grade level, right, for strategy. And then we try to show over time what that chronic and severe rate is looking at for schools. Then we finally get into a meaty section that I'm going to go into detail with, and that's ADA. And that's how we're progress monitoring this year. We're being aware of chronic absenteeism and we're bringing ADA into the fold so we know what's happening day to day. Finally, at the end of the report, folks are able to see those causes for missing school, right? Those reasons for absences. And I'm trying to get schools to really focus in on those sections to see why are kids at your specific school missing. Okay, so jump in. We get in immediately. Folks go into the report, and they can only see kids that are in the student information system that they have access to, right? So most folks can only see the kids that they have access to in their school, right? And what's going on here? So we just have a quick lay of the land. We have some data going on. We know it's chronic absenteeism. I would like to highlight 3 areas that I'm having leadership and principals look at regularly. And my recommendation to schools now for a reason later is that they're looking at chronic absenteeism dashboard every day because there's specific charts in a second that they get student level information. But here we open up to chronic absenteeism, and the first thing I want to look at is what is our rate? It's 2026, we're at 14%. But this chart is new for us this year because we've been able to engineer year to date, right? For so long, we've been looking at what our chronic rate is currently, and then where we ended the year before, not knowing really how we're doing at specific points in the year. But now, as of the specific date, as you can see, September 9th this year, we were at 14%. Chronically absent. The year before, we were 21.4 chronically absent on September 9th. So we have that contextual value immediately for schools, right? That's great if they have goals against chronic absenteeism, and that's even better for new principals and buildings to kind of gauge where they were a year prior. From there, I shift schools all the way to the right with that pyramid there, and I just want that breakout by severity, okay? Every data point that we have in this is drills to the students behind that data point. We call it 2 clicks to students. You click on the report, you click a data point, you get the students that you need to help, right? 2 clicks. For severity, I always want to clock that severe, right? Of our 14, how much is severe? 5%, pretty considerable. Below, I like to show, we've had this for a few years, but it's really starting to gain traction this year in the first month, which is kind of surprising me, but maybe it's because we've revisualized it and made it more apparent. But that's the idea of persistently chronically absent. And that's what we're calculating for our kids. Those are students who are currently chronically absent right now, and they were chronically absent to end the year prior, right? So they're not finding themselves out of that chronic circumstance, right? So we need to look at their interventions that happened last year, what we're doing right now, and see if any changes need to be made. things I'm clocking immediately as I go here is, okay, we have 14% chronically absent rate. 5% of that is severe. 7% of that 14, so half are habitually missing school. So we need to attack those. And we also need to look at the new 7% who were not chronically absent the year before. Like I said, below this, you would go into some student breakouts, every student population that we can track with fidelity, and also grade level for strategizing. But below that, I would go into the absenteeism section, the all absenteeism section. And this is important because I have to train the schools on, we're flipping the script, right? We're going from chronic absenteeism and looking at how many students are having that 10% or more days missed to that average daily attendance, right? How many of your students are actually present day to day, right? And it's because not all absences are created equal when it comes to chronic absenteeism, right? Those reasons matter for why they're missing. It's those reasons in chronic absenteeism is why we measure it that way. It's because those reasons lead to the negative outcomes, okay? Where average daily attendance does not limit the codes. So if you're looking for MTSS or consecutive absences, you really want to make sure you're bringing in a measure that calculates all absenteeism days and not just looking at the ones that may lead towards negative outcomes. Okay, and so for this, because I can't go over everything, again, it's like you want to know your chronic rates, 14%, but how many students in your school or in your district are showing up day to day, right? Almost 95%. Really good. I'm trying to train schools that if you're below 90, you really want to start looking at your attendance and your ADA to see why that many kids are missing school on a daily basis. Shift focus to the right, and this is the chart. The consecutive absences is why I'm telling schools to, when they ask, how often should I go look at the absenteeism dashboard? The answer is every day. And the answer is every day because of this consecutive absences chart. This is showing us students who are currently absent between this gray bar would be between 3 and 4 days, below that 5 and 7, 8 to 10, so on and so forth, right? And this is updated as of attendance from the day prior. So if you see that kid's not in your building and they're in that chart when you click in today, right? Those are kids who are, as far as I'm concerned, they're missing consecutive school 3, 4, 9, 10 days in a row. That is a severe risk right there. We need to make sure we contact them and ensure we have some connectedness there, right? We want to get some trusted adults. We want to know why they're missing school and what the plan is for them to come back. Below that, by popular request from middle schools and high schools, was absenteeism by period. We know we have it by day by kids. We know we have it for our school. Can we please get it by period, right? They want it by teacher too, but we can't get it by teacher, but we can break out by period. And I am starting to talk to principals at the high school level who are really starting to strategize with their schedules based on this chart alone, especially with tardies. Finally, in the all absenteeism section, we're looking at all kinds of data, right? We have chronic on the top, we have ADA on the bottom, we have so many students missing these many days, we have consecutive students missing these many. How many students are we formally intervening on? I know a ton of interventions are happening, but how many of them are actually being tracked, right? We bring in the MTSS data into this report. Quick little table. I just want them to know the number of students that are tier 2 and tier 3 specifically for area of concern attendance. Okay. From there, right on the left, you can see here, they would go into reasons, right? And they can start to see all of the codes that their front office is putting in for kids missing and do some analysis from there. But now, how do we get the most out of our absenteeism data? Okay, so we have our chronic percentage. We have ADA that's informing us in the moment and helping us with consecutive absences and MTSS, right? But how do we know if any of our interventions are working, right? We need to be able to say, does Check-in Connect work? How does attendance monitoring work? During specific points in time, are we getting the most bang for our buck? Are we allocating the resources appropriately? And so I am so excited because in our absenteeism dashboard, we have sister reports, right? Reports that are related to attendance, but didn't quite make it in just because I don't want to cause too much chaos in the report into the absenteeism dashboard, but they're related to attendance. You click on those and you get some more data. One of those is called the year-to-date lookup report. And let me explain what's going on with that year-to-date lookup report. Anybody who has access to our system, so central office leaders, school leaders, teachers, folks who have access can go at any point in time to the year-to-date lookup report and select any date that has happened previously in the current school year, right? So they can go all the way to the first day of school if they want. And what this report will do is we've snapshotted the attendance, the days and the percent for every kid on on every day. It brings back those data, and then it also tells you where they are today, right? Then we do that math to tell you, hey, during this specific time period, student had perfect attendance or they missed X amount of days, right? So why is this important, right? So in September, if I were to say every kid for the first half of September or first 2 weeks of September who has perfect attendance, right? No missed days. Um, they get some raffle tickets to win prizes in the following week, right? Maybe some headphones, some popsicles, who knows what they can get, right? Last year, our district did not have the ability to go back and automatically see these just at a glance in a notice. They actually had to go and track and see which kids had perfect attendance and which didn't, right? And at scale with over 100 schools, very hard to do. And so now we can do it quickly. We know on 9/1 if each row has a kid, the student had 4 days absent as of 9/1. They still only have 4 days absent as of 9/16. So they have 0 days, perfect attendance during that time frame. If I were in this report right now, I would filter for all the zeros, and those would be all my kids who get raffle tickets for perfect attendance. Excellent, right? I want schools celebrating perfect attendance and attendance campaigns as much as possible. Make it fun to attend school. For other reasons. We know school is fun, but just make attendance itself fun. Okay, lastly, in the year-to-date lookup. So this is what we went into the school year with. I'm training schools. This is what's going on. If you want to see the difference between point A and point B, do this. And then 2 weeks ago, we were able to bring in current intervention information, and I am just current intervention data, and I couldn't be more thrilled, right? So now, next to all of this information, we're able to say, here's their current attendance intervention start date, right? So now we have a date that we can look at. Did it start sometime right here between the dates that we're looking at? And what is that intervention, right? So at a glance, I can see, hey, maybe for the first 2 weeks, this kid in the first month of school missed 4 days. Maybe check in and connect is working for this kid. Is 2 weeks enough to tell me definitively if an intervention is working? No, but like I'm literally losing sleep at the prospect of at the end of this year, if we get more and more schools entering these interventions, right, with fidelity, is we'll be able to see localized at the school and regionally with pockets of schools and feeders which attendance interventions are actually finding success and which ones are not, right? It's very exciting times when it comes to intervention tracking in our district. I absolutely see transformation coming. Okay, so that's just the data. I wish I could go over way more. I could talk about it all day, but how did we get here, right? I talked to Bob about this, and it's important to know that I know a lot of folks that we work with in schools think data happens at a click, but we all know it takes time. We started our data warehouse in 2012 in our school district. I didn't come here till 2014, but in 2012, they were doing the average daily attendance calculation, right? We didn't even adopt chronic absenteeism in our absenteeism dashboard until after the 2016 and 2017 school year, right? And then from there, we have these new data. We have a new calculation. We're looking for that 10% or higher for every kid. And we're starting to compare it to our early warning system reporting. We're starting to input it into other reports, right? Student level, we want to see how they achieved in ELA math. We also want to see what their attendance was. Were they chronically absent? That led to us just every drill through we have in every report, let's add a column that says if a kid's chronically absent or not. And then that evolved to special population. We have accountability reporting, we have state reporting, we have local reporting. Let's treat chronically absent just like we treat FRL, IEP, and English learners. I want chronically absent right there so I can see what the achievement is and the effect of chronically absent students have on certain achievement versus others. As we were sprinkling that in, creating new special populations to inform other analysis, we did create a new absenteeism dashboard that had a lot of good information on it, and that was right after COVID started. We were working towards that dashboard, and then great timing because we had to go to the hybrid. We needed to be able to see who was learning from home, who was learning at school, hybrid schedules, and our absenteeism dashboard really played a key role during that time. And it was also during that time where continuous improvements were always being made. I mean, I'm absolutely addicted to continuous improvement. It's never good enough in my mind, right? But it's happening there, but we're focusing on other reports because we know this report is getting a lot of high usage and folks know how to use it. Last year, we made that major upgrade, like I said, by bringing in that intervention information and by bringing in the intervention bank, sorry. And that's what led me to get so excited a few weeks ago when we were finally able to put that in with our year-to-date lookup, right? That was just an engineering marvel from the team. I'm still so excited. Okay, so mass adoption right during last school year of our absenteeism dashboard. What does that mean? So absenteeism dashboard prior to last school year was already one of our top 3 reports used as far as usage. Folks in schools going to the report and getting data. And that report was ran 2 years ago, 7,000 times, right? Huge numbers. Last year, it was last school year, at the end of the school year, just over 17,000 times the absenteeism dashboard was ran last year, right? So we had over 140% increase in our usage in that single report, right? And it was one, the data got a little bit better, even though it just got better this year. And two, primarily, we had a new superintendent. New superintendent came in and he prioritized not fixing chronically absent, but attacking it, right? We need to know more about chronically absent at every level, every school level, every central office support. What are we doing to ensure our systems are the absolute best they can be to support kids who are chronically absent? And so we can kind of tackle it from that standpoint. That type of shared goal, consistently communicated, um, and sending them data weekly was an absolute winner, and it led to the mass adoption we have today. And it also led to a higher data literacy within our schools and central supports when it comes to attendance data. And because of that, I'm able to launch what I previewed earlier this school year, which we're like 5, 6 weeks into the school year, and we have a lot of usage. We already have over 3,000 hits in the first, like I just said, 5 weeks of school on that absenteeism dashboard, and my email is just filling up with more and more ideas from schools. So I haven't even announced to them formally that we put in that intervention information. That's going to happen later this week. But as you can see, like very excited. Transformation should be incoming. Once we're able to correlate some of those interventions, right? I want to know which ones are working and which ones aren't. All right, last slide. Immediate next steps, right? Bob and Jen, what if someone's starting from scratch? What would I tell them? First thing that I would tell them is look at our timeline. None of this happens overnight. We're looking at roughly 10 years, right? 7, 8 years of not every day looking at absenteeism, but just kind of keeping it at the forefront, always wanting to continuously improve, right? When you're looking at absenteeism data, it's truly an area of data when we're helping kids where every enhancement can make a difference. Every improvement can be better information in the hands of schools, right? So first thing I would recommend is start taking snapshots of your data. If you're not able to do this yet, save as much as you can. Probably not going to be able to get attendance data daily, but maybe monthly, right? Start with monthly. First, just get it working, then make it great later, right? So easy for me to say, hey, go set up a data warehouse and buy some servers, but right, let's focus on trying to get that data warehouse set up so you can start snapshotting your data and you can use that historical information to inform in the future. Next, count clicks, right? Focus on customer satisfaction. That time where that period after during COVID, we were refining. We weren't getting the adoption I thought we would, right? Thinking we have some pretty good data, we're here to inform, just not using it as much. And then I'm watching people in schools use the report, and it's taking them 10, 11, 12 clicks to even get to the information they need. Some of them are quitting before they even get there. So I literally went back and I started counting the clicks it took to get to meaningful information in our reports and taking them down from 10 to 12 clicks to 2 in every report, right? Making it as seamless as possible will get folks in your school districts using data more. I already talked about the shared goals consistently communicated. That worked in spades, right? And we're doing it again this year. And now we're also looking at behavior and discipline. But it also worked because we had a way to progress monitor, right? We were giving those weekly updates of up-to-date data by school on, hey, we're goal setting against chronic absenteeism, and this is where you are right now. Okay. And it worked. We made gains in elementary and middle school. We made great gains in elementary and middle school. High school was stagnant, but I absolutely guarantee we're going to make gains next year. I think we're going to blow the roof off of chronic absenteeism this year. Another immediate next step is if you're only looking at chronic today and you have the ability to bring in an ADA calculation, I would absolutely do that and start looking for those kids who are missing school consecutively, right? We need them to get connected to school. And I loved how Bob brought that up, that reintegration from their social. It's adults don't like getting out of their work routine for 3, 4, 5 days. We feel awkward coming back after missing that much time. That's even amplified or multiplied even more for students, right? And for children. I love the idea of a reintegration plan for students who have been missing school consecutively, right? They just want to make sure they're being welcomed back to school. And also MTSS, okay? Because of those reason codes, sometimes when you're supporting a kid, they might be missing school for reasons that are not connected to chronic. So you want to have that ADA calculation available. If you can, I would start treating your chronically absent population like a special population, like I said, just like FRL and IEP. And most importantly, and why it's bolded, is listen to folks in schools. For a long time in my role, it was a lot of guessing and a lot of pushing data. And it's been the last 4 or 5 years where I'm actually going to schools and I'm joining meetings and I'm having discussions with, principals, APs, counselors, teachers, and I'm listening to their needs and I'm changing our reports to fit what they need in the moment, right? So every upgrade we've made, I'd say over the last 5, 6 years, has probably come from an idea either directly from an educator in a school or something I saw them doing. So I can't stress it enough. And they are welcoming. Those people in schools, they love it when I join their admin meetings or their attendance meetings. I say I'm there to learn, but ultimately we end up having great conversations and all that. But anyways, that's it for today.
JT, before I turn it over to Dr. Balfanz for some follow-up, we did have one question about your MTSS intervention bank. I'm not surprised. That's a question from this group.
Yeah.
Do you Are you able to share what that looks like? Is it available on your website, or is there a way to sort of share what some of those codes are?
I could give you and Bob something that
Yeah,
could absolutely be shared widely. I couldn't just go do it right now on my screen because we actually have our MTSS intervention bank in Infinite Campus, so there would be some private information in
sure.
there.
Of course.
The way that is, it's very customized, and it's teachers are able to go in there and enter freely what interventions are. Now that we brought in those data, they're a little dirty because anybody can just go freely enter what they
Yeah,
want. So we're
that
working with our
consistent.
MTSS department and our intervention and truancy and those folks to see if we can come up with some more default categories
Hmm.
so we can measure the types of things we want to measure. And as I bring up intervention and truancy, I talk a lot about me, and our team and all that, but I am so focused on the data and information. We have like this intervention and truancy team that are in schools helping these folks, helping kids, re-engagement specialists, truancy officers, coordinators, directors, that I see them taking our data and teaching schools how to use our data.
Hmm.
So it's not just accountability in the data team, it's truancy. They're out there saying, hey, let's make some data informed decisions.
Yeah,
Happy to share that later this week.
great.
Wonderful, Jen. I'm just going to ask JT just a couple of things to clarify and to extend, and I really encourage other folks to add their questions to the chat because this is really about districts and schools learning from each other. But just wanted just extend in your remarks a little bit ways, JT, and
We
so
should. Think we should still do it.
one thing, and I just this is I think this might it's a brief clarification. You talk about bringing ADA in, and I think what you're saying is you want to bring in your attendance data that's sort of collected in your ADA files or area because you're not really talking about bringing percentages in. You're not saying you have the what's our what percent of our kids are in a day, but really what you're bringing in is the ability to get real-time data by looking at all attendances. And it's really about looking at all absences in current time. And you're saying you may have to draw from that organization of data, ADA, to get to be able to have real-time data. That's what lets you look at how many kids have missed consecutive days of school at any point in time. It's what lets you look at, a little bit of this thing of like I saw you didn't talk about the end, but like how many of our kids have missed 0 to 4, 5 to 8, those buckets of kids in real time. And also it's what lets you get the very good how have things improved this week from last week, right? As far as like total attendance. So I just wanted to clarify, it's not the percentage of average daily attendance that's the big kick through. It's the getting the data that's underlying that calculation that lets you get all this real-time look that you couldn't get otherwise. I'm just wanted to say
Yeah,
if I'm
absolutely. I
saying
mean,
that right.
yeah, we put the percentage up there so the school can see, and I do tell that to every school. You need to know how many kids are just present day to day through ADA, but it is absolutely the underlying. We need to know the days. We need to know they're missing school because just looking at chronic, right? There's a lot that's going on with that chronic calculation, and we've talked about it before that. Hey, some of those kids who get severe, right? Some research is telling us they get severe immediately when school starts, and they stay severe till the end of the year, right? So what happens to that chronic rate when a lot of kids become chronically locked? They can't get out of chronic status anymore. It becomes a measure that can become stagnant because, you might have a goal to get down to 15% and it's literally mathematically impossible, right? And so we're kind of pulling our hair out as a district, and I'm thinking, how can we inform this? And it's bringing ADA to the table and trusting schools that, hey, we have these codes that work for chronic, right? And they don't really know which ones are chronic and which ones aren't, but we isolate those for this percentage, but then trusting the schools to know we're bringing in all absent days here. And if the kid's missing for good reason, right, legitimate reasons, then the school knows that. That's okay that that kid's chronic. They have that information, but at least they know the whole picture, right? It's not just that the kid has the label that they're chronic and they're not coming out of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And
hold
that,
on, the win the week. You said like, hey, four
yeah,
days
yeah,
here or 2 days here.
yeah.
That's also like you and I have talked a bunch like, how do we win the quarter? Okay, so if these kids are locked, if kid locks, in the first 2 months of school and they're going to be chronic for the rest of the year, that's not a failure, right? We can still win with that kid. There's still interventions that can be placed that can work, right? And so now with the year-to-date lookup, we're going to have an overarching percentage for every kid. But now we can see, hey, if you want to see the quarter, specifically choose that date, choose the end of the quarter date, and see what the chronic rate was for each of those kids, and then start to show by quarter, are they winning or are they not?
Thanks, JT. And my one other question, though I could talk all day, but I want to
Me
leave room
too.
for other people and for the breakouts, is that what are you learning about the support schools need to use this data that gets richer and richer and richer?
It is getting richer, and last year it was okay, they need more. It wasn't enough, and that is why we brought ADA. And this year we're only 5 weeks in, but I've been joining some middle school and high school attendance meetings. And what I am seeing is one, they are forming teams, right? It's not specifically like, okay, here's an attendance clerk, attendance person, right? It's counselors, it's admins, it's truancy officers, and right, and they're bringing it together. And what I'm noticing is through data richness like this is they do need explanation. And when they really start to understand what the persistently chronically absent means, I am seeing schools very much hone in on that percentage and, starting to write down who has a trusted adult and who doesn't, right? Trying to get those kids who are habitually missing absent. What is To answer your question more directly is what do I see as missing and as the data just keep getting richer and richer and I'm doing continuous improvement is more training, right? We have if we could get everyone to see the data the way all of us data nerds see the data, then I think we would have even more success bought into our schools. But we just need more training. We need to get more face time with these folks, and we need to do more scenario based so they can understand what's going on.
Thanks. Super helpful. All
Interventions
right,
too.
Jen. Sorry. Back to you, Jen. We could go all day, JT, but we got to let
I
others get
know.
in.
Well, there are a couple of questions, so I'm monitoring the time because we do want to get folks talking. But there were a couple of questions here in the chat, and one that I wanted to ask about was from a data perspective, how do you handle the intervention handoff when kids change schools? So this mobility question. And I don't know if you know that or if that's something we can follow up with later based upon your extended team, but how do you handle those intervention handoffs was the question.
Yeah, and that is definitely handled more by our intervention and truancy office and our MTSS office as well. But from a high level, I can talk about it. And right up until this year, it was a pretty manual process, especially thinking about going elementary to middle school, right?
Mm,
Fifth grade teachers having relationships with their feeders, letting them know, having a handoff of which kids are tier two, which kids are tier three, and what interventions are going on. Now, was it happening to the full extent 100% of the time? Probably not. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But now that we have that year-to-date lookup, there's actually an automated way for them to go and see for a lot of kids at once who is being intervened on and who isn't currently. And being able to have that current start date in there should be able to weed out a lot of the old ones that haven't been closed as well. So this is really the first time with our automated systems that we're able to track the interventions and
mhm.
really be able to see if there was a handoff or not.
Yeah. And one more, I think you started to talk about this, but in terms of your school-based personnel, which of them are involved in implementing the attendance interventions? Like, do you have specific school-based, like attendance coordinators in your school? I think you've alluded to some of that. I just
Yeah, there's
think
like
that would be
attendance.
helpful for folks to know.
Yeah, we have some attendance clerks in our high schools. I would say who's doing the implementation at the elementary level, right? That would be their classroom teacher and a counselor if they have a counselor on site. An administrator might have a good relationship with the student. They might be the intervention for that kid, or they might be the person who's managing that. Um, at the middle and high school level, we have MTSS, and maybe at the elementary level, we have MTSS coaches, right? So they can absolutely help with that. And school and teachers have their MTSS meetings. So it's primarily done at the teacher level. High school, it's done at counselor level, AP, attendance. When I join these meetings at the high school level for attendance, um, they're actually really cool because it's very much like we have our list of kids, who's doing what, and they're really just assigning captains to groups of kids who are like one another.
Mm,
So it's not just one role, right? We're really taking it. This is a chronic absent. Getting kids back to school regularly is an everybody problem, not just an attendance clerk or someone like that.
yeah, well said. I want to get us into groups. One, I'll ask, there's a question about guidance on how discussion guides, and I think we can talk, JT, and I can see if there's some things from your intervention teams and MTSS teams that we could provide. And later on, we do have some resources to share related to some of those discussion guides that we can share as well. So I just want to, on behalf of our team and on behalf of everyone joining today, thank you for sharing, particularly your perspective from, as the strategic data project fellow, the data analytics person, like thinking about this from an all hands on deck and just seeing how engaged that you are. And I think, the more and more that we can encourage attendance teams to be bringing in and making sure that a data person is present, to your point, listening to the schools, I think is very powerful. So again, thank you for joining us. Of course, you're welcome to stay. You're welcome to, we'll follow up and make sure for those of you joining us today, participating, we'll see if we can answer additional questions as well. Thank you,
Great. Thank
JT.
you, Jen. Thank you, everyone. This was a thrill.
Great. And I'm going to go ahead and stop our recording.